Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It is 7:07 on O'Connor and Company this Monday morning in your nation's capital. So glad you're here to help us through the day, and hopefully we're helping you get through the day too, because it's, well, some days are easier than others. But we're trying to pick up the pieces and move on and reflect on the criminal investigation into the assassination of Charlie Kirk, plus all of the vigils and the great things that have been said about him. And, of course, we're going to remind you of all the horrible things that are being said about him posthumously, and by extension, they're being said about you as well. There's a lot of anger, a lot of hate out there. They are right about that. They just don't quite recognize where it's coming from. At 7:35, Rob O'Donnell, former homicide detective for the New York Police Department, will join us to give us his insights into how this investigation transpired and what's next for those investigators. 8:05, David Bozell, Media Research Center, will give a roundup of the media. And then at 8:35, Adam Gillette, Accuracy Media. Adam is keeping a database now and has an active website of all of the people publicly who have celebrated the assassination of a 31-year-old father of two toddlers, because that's where they are now. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
Let's bring in our friend, Joe diGenova. It's times like this where you want to talk to friends. Joe and I have exchanged several text messages over the course of the last several days, and I don't know where to begin, Joe, other than to let you just sort of talk here about what we witnessed and experienced together last week.
Hello.
Hello, Joe. You're on. Go for it.
We finally caught up there. We got cut off there for a minute. Good to talk to you, Larry.
Thanks for joining us. I was just saying you and I were changing text messages a little bit this weekend as we were reflecting on the horror of this assassination. And I'd love for you to just sort of speak from the heart about what happened last week.
Well, I went through a period of tremendous anger as a result of this. Victoria and I talked about it a lot, nonstop. Obviously, it wasn't very complicated to figure out why this happened. And the anger grew as a result of knowing that Charlie's death was a substitute for the death of President Trump. All the anger directed at Charlie was anger that started back in 2016 when the media and the Democrats and people decided that they had to demonize Donald Trump and destroy him, both metaphorically and literally. And two assassination attempts on the president proved that their language was very, very effective in reaching unstable people. And Charlie's death was a direct result. There's a straight line from that language and the motivations that it sought to create in the death of Charlie Kirk. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And there has to be accountability for that, not just for the murderer, not just for Mr. Robinson, who's being held in custody, but for the people who generated the hate. And I consider all the organizations involved in generating this hate liable for this, certainly in a political sense. But I believe that the administration should conduct a federal grand jury investigation into the organizations that are funding all of this activity over the country and find out who is responsible for it. This has gone on. This is enough. This has got nothing to do with free speech and funding the people you want. This is about people who are purposely trying to generate violence. That's against the law. They need to be investigated.
Joe, you've been seeing over the weekend some horrible things that they are saying about Charlie Kirk. Even in his death, they cannot help themselves. They are calling him a racist. You name it. I don't even want to say it. They're saying horrible things about him. I know you can't you can't sue you can't libel the dead, essentially. But they're also suggesting this about his organization. When people are saying all of these lies, not just about him, but also TPUSA, is there any way to hold these people accountable for their lies?
Well, the organization has legal rights, and it can take action against those individuals. I, for one, believe that the Southern Poverty Law Center, which listed Turning Point USA as a hate organization, should be sued dramatically for that castigation. They know the Southern Poverty Law Center calls you a hate group because they want something to happen to you. Mm-hmm. They want boycotts. They want action. They want violence. I think that Turning Point USA should sue the Southern Poverty Law Center, and I think that the Justice Department should impanel a grand jury and investigate the Southern Poverty Law Center, because I believe that they are fomenting violence.
Joe, I don't know how closely you watched the investigation unfold. I mean, they had nothing to work with at the beginning except for the one security camera that showed a figure running across the roof, and they had an idea of where the shots came from. And within, it appears, 36 to 48 hours, they were able to get enough security footage to track this person down, to publicly put the picture out, to have somebody identify him and recognize him, and then get the suspect turned in. I'm no expert. It seems like it went pretty well, but there's been a lot of scrutiny, and I've seen a lot of criticism of Kash Patel as the director of the FBI. Is that warranted? What do you see here that sticks out to you?
I think the criticism of Kash Patel is born of another source. What's true is there are you'll notice the criticism is coming from a lot of former FBI officials.
Yes.
Apparently those officials don't like black people running the FBI or dark-skinned people running the FBI. I'm sorry, but I've had enough of the white guys running the FBI. They didn't do a very good job. This is nonsensical. This is racist. Yeah. It's outrageous. The criticism of Kash Patel is pure and utter racism. They may not like his ex-tweets, but you know what? It's better than undermining a government through a seditious conspiracy to take down a sitting president.
Yeah, thanks. Again, I'm not an expert on this sort of thing, and there's a lot of people that, it just seems to me that they were able to get the guy pretty quickly here.
It was an amazingly fast investigation.
Yes.
Even with the idiotic expectations of 60-minute TV shows where you expect a crime to be solved in an hour, this was a spectacular success of solving a crime. It was great coordination between state, local, and federal officials. They did a beautiful job. They got the guy. They used the media perfectly by showing the scene. And let's give credit to the family of him and friends who turned him in, and the minister who was involved in it. These people knew what was going to happen, because I'm sure that if the manhunt had gone on and this guy had gotten access to another weapon, there would have been a shootout. The law enforcement officers could have been injured or killed, and he might have been killed.
Yeah, well said. We hadn't mentioned that for a father to turn in his own son. Yeah. It takes a lot, and I know that we all think that we would do that, but you never know until you're faced with that. And what moral courage for that father to do that, knowing what happened. Joe, stay with us. We got more to talk about with Joe diGenova about this particular crime, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, but also some criticism of conservatives being upset that public figures are celebrating this, and there's some question whether this is a First Amendment issue or not. And also, by the way, let's not forget the crime issue in D.C. and the president's announcement that we've got some more cities that are going to be receiving federal law enforcement coming in. I want to get Joe's take on all of that stuff, and we will.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
So there have been people on campuses, professors, there have been judges, there have been lawyers and teachers and elected officials, doctors and nurses, all celebrate, not just commenting, not just offering their opinion, but celebrating and gleefully celebrating and promoting the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And many of them have lost their jobs. Conservatives have pointed this out and let their employers know about it, and that has resulted in their dismissal. Jonathan Turley, who I know that you agree with quite a bit and you respect, Joe, a law professor, and I think you have to be a professor of law rather than living in the real world to come up with his opinion. He says that this is a mockery of the First Amendment, that this is a free speech issue. Where do you? It seems to me that this is not a question of cancel culture. This is direct ramifications for saying something that, they're not offering a political opinion. They are doing something that is so outside the norm of human behavior and decency, Joe.
Well, institutions have a right to their own standards. In other words, these people are free to say whatever they want. they are also, unfortunately for them, responsible for what they say, and there are consequences. A university or a company or a law firm or an accounting firm does not have to tolerate the First Amendment speeches of individuals. It's the government that cannot control your speech. Private institutions can do whatever they want. This has nothing to do with free speech. These people are free to say whatever they want, and they are free to receive the consequences of being stupid and arrogant and vicious and nasty and violent. The language of praising this is violence by word. And people who don't understand that deserve to be fired from their jobs. This happens all the time. This is a mixed up, again, everybody has to remember, the First Amendment is designed to prevent the government from stopping you. It has nothing to do with private institutions.
Thank you. I appreciate that. If we, Julie, do you have anything else on Charlie Kirk or any of that before we switch?
No, go on.
Okay, because I do want to ask about the president making the announcement that both New Orleans, Louisiana, as well as Memphis, Tennessee, will get an increase in federal law enforcement assistance. These are blue cities in red states, and it appears as though there's going to be some cooperation. How does this work exactly, and is there precedent for this sort of thing?
Well, the presidents of the United States have used National Guards for national emergencies of crime and civil rights enforcement and other things starting in the 1940s. So there's nothing unusual about this. The president has the authority to do this. There isn't any question about it. And when the governors in those states are inviting them in, there isn't any problem at all. Now, the individual mayors may not like it, but the mayors do not control the National Guard. The governors in the states theoretically have some control, although ultimate authority is with the president of the United States. This is a good idea. The governors want it. In the red states, they realize they have problems with democratically controlled cities that have a crime problem, and that's their duty. That's their responsibility. They should be doing this. They should all be thankful that they have a president who is willing to exercise this authority, and I think it's being exercised responsibly. Just ignore Illinois, Pritzker, and Mayor Johnson in Chicago. Those two people are simply crazy.
Thank you. Well, I do like it when Joe is able to summarize things. Well, they're just crazy. They're just absolutely crazy about that. You're
That's
correct.
right. Ignore them.
If I can then pivot more to some other statements that President Trump has made over the weekend with regard to going after some of these organizations. You touched on it, but I would love to know a little bit further about the organizations and what role they might have in funding other organizations and individuals who then inspire and work toward some of the violence that we have seen here, and also the protection of some of the criminal behavior that we've seen and advocating for it. Is this a RICO situation? Go ahead.
I think the line between advocacy, protected advocacy, and violence has been blurred now so sufficiently by virtue of assassination and other violence in the streets that Antifa and all these organizations are being funded by various groups. Everyone knows who they are. It's been written about. It's time for the Justice Department to impanel a grand jury or two or three and issue subpoenas to the Soros Open Society Foundation, other large left-wing funding organizations, 501c4s and C3s, and get their records and find out what's going on. That's what grand juries are for. It doesn't mean anybody's going to be indicted, but they have to get the information and start finding out the links between the violence and the funders. This is fundamental in a free society. You do not allow this to continue at this point. People are being killed who are political advocates. That cannot be tolerated in a free society. That's what grand juries exist for. These were used in the South to go after the Klan. We have a new Klan in this country, and it's on the left.
Joe, appreciate your passion. I know that this has affected you, and because you're a human being, and it should affect you. And you always are able to channel your energies and channel your emotions in a way that go ahead, Julie. I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry. No, I'm so sorry. You were saying nice stuff about Joe, and I'm cutting you off. But
no, you're right,
Joe. I'm sort of desperate to ask you this one question, though. You know, there's a lot of fear from conservatives that the assassination of Kirk is going to sort of kill speech. It's going to effectively scare people too much. They're going to be too scared to go to these college campuses. there's some chatter among conservatives that these universities have got to start guaranteeing the safety and paying for the security of conservatives on campus. What will that take? I mean, they get federal funds, especially ones that are funded by the government. Is that going to take an executive order to make this happen?
Probably, because the universities, remember when the Supreme Court ruled that affirmative action was unconstitutional in admissions, and
Yeah.
I said at the time, this ruling will mean nothing, because what you will
Right.
get from the university, from the professoriate, will be massive resistance, the equivalent of massive resistance. And what have they done? They redefined affirmative action
Yes.
into DEI and other things, and they are doing exactly what they did before. The answer to all of this is cutting off the money. The
Yep.
lifeblood of these institutions is money. And you know what? This comes at the same time that there are federal judges in this country who are giving anonymous interviews to NBC News telling them they don't like what the president's doing and they don't like the Supreme Court. We are now reaching a point where there is a civil war between the Democratic district court judges and some of the courts of appeal judges and the Supreme Court and the President of the United States. And if the Justice Department wants to do a public service, they need to issue a subpoena to every United States federal judge in the country and ask them to provide their telephone records and whether or not they communicated with NBC News anonymously, because any one of those judges who did should be impeached.
Thank you, Joe. Joe diGenova, always a fantastic conversation. Proud to call you a friend. Thank you, sir.
You bet.